In the summer of 1940, as Europe burned and borders closed one by one, a quiet Japanese diplomat sat at his desk in a small consulate in Kaunas, Lithuania, facing a decision that would define his life. His name was Chiune Sugihara. He was not a powerful man. He did not command armies or shape grand strategy. He was a mid-level official, trained to obey orders, raised to respect hierarchy, and expected to place duty to his government above all else. Yet in the chaos of World War II, he would choose a different kind of duty, one rooted not in loyalty to a state, but in loyalty to humanity. Lithuania in 1940 was a place filled with fear. Nazi Germany had already overrun much of Europe, and the Soviet Union loomed from the east. Jewish refugees flooded into the country from Poland and surrounding regions, desperate for escape. They carried stories of ghettos, mass arrests, and executions. Many still could not fully comprehend the scale of what was unfolding, but they knew enough to understand that staying meant death. These refugees crowded around foreign embassies, clutching documents, begging for visas, searching for any legal path out of Europe. Most were turned away. Countries closed their doors. Immigration quotas were full. Bureaucratic rules became walls as deadly as barbed wire. For many, hope narrowed to a single possibility: transit visas that would allow them to pass through the Soviet Union and eventually reach safer lands. Japan was not an obvious refuge. It was allied with Nazi Germany through the Axis Pact, though relations were complex and often pragmatic rather than ideological. Japan was focused on its own imperial ambitions in Asia. Its diplomats were instructed to be cautious, to avoid actions that might anger Germany or complicate relations with the Soviet Union. Chiune Sugihara knew this. He also knew that issuing visas without proper authorization could end his career. Still, day after day, he watched desperate families gather outside his consulate. Men in worn coats, women holding children too tired to cry, rabbis, students, merchants, elderly couples. They bowed, pleaded, and waited. At first, Sugihara did what was expected. He requested instructions from Tokyo. He sent cables asking whether he could issue transit visas to Jewish refugees who lacked full documentation or final destination visas. The reply was clear: no. Visas were to be issued only to those who met strict requirements. Japan did not want complications. Sugihara asked again. He emphasized the humanitarian crisis. He explained that these people had nowhere else to go. The answer did not change. Follow policy. For a man trained in obedience, this should have been the end of the matter. But Sugihara was not only a diplomat. He was a husband and a father. He was a man who had lived abroad, who spoke multiple languages, who understood the consequences of political indifference. He had seen violence in China during Japan's earlier campaigns. He had resigned from a previous post in protest over mistreatment of local populations. Quietly, consistently, he had shown that his conscience did not always align with official policy. As the days passed, the situation outside the consulate grew more desperate. News spread that the Soviet Union was preparing to annex Lithuania. Time was running out. Refugees feared that once Soviet control was established, escape would become impossible. Sugihara faced a choice that many people never confront so directly: obey orders and preserve his career, or disobey and risk everything for people he did not know. He chose to act. Without authorization, Sugihara began issuing transit visas. These documents allowed refugees to travel through Japan en route to other destinations, often Curacao or other nominal endpoints that did not actually require visas. The technicalities were fragile, but they were enough to open borders. From morning until late at night, Sugihara wrote. He signed visas by hand, one after another. His wife Yukiko helped, bringing food, supporting him as his hand cramped and his eyes burned with exhaustion. He reportedly wrote hundreds of visas a day. The refugees waited patiently, understanding that each document could mean life or death. The Japanese consulate became a place of controlled chaos. Lines stretched down the street. People slept nearby, afraid to lose their place. Parents whispered prayers. Children watched the windows. Every stamp of ink felt like a miracle. Sugihara did not ask about religion, wealth, or status. He did not demand bribes. He did not select the most deserving. He simply wrote. By the time the consulate was ordered to close, Sugihara had issued thousands of visas. Estimates range from 2,000 to over 6,000 individuals, depending on how family members are counted. Each visa represented an entire network of lives. Parents, children, grandchildren, descendants who would exist because one man refused to look away. Even as he was forced to leave Kaunas, Sugihara continued writing. At the train station, as his departure was announced, he signed visas through the window of the carriage. When paper ran out, he wrote on scraps. Finally, as the train pulled away, he reportedly threw his official stamp to the refugees, apologizing that he could do no more. The journey for those who received the visas was still perilous. They traveled across the Soviet Union on the Trans-Siberian Railway, enduring suspicion, hunger, and fear. Many reached Japan, where Jewish organizations helped them continue onward to Shanghai, North America, or other destinations. Some remained in Japan temporarily. Some settled elsewhere. Most survived the war. Sugihara returned to Japan after the conflict, but his act of defiance did not bring recognition or reward. Instead, it brought silence. He was dismissed from the diplomatic service in 1947, officially as part of post-war downsizing, though the real reason was widely understood. His career was over. For years, he struggled financially. He took small jobs. He sold light bulbs. He lived quietly. He did not speak publicly about what he had done. In post-war Japan, the country was rebuilding, grappling with defeat, occupation, and its own war crimes. There was little space for stories of moral resistance that complicated national narratives. Meanwhile, the people he had saved rebuilt their lives across the world. Many did not even know his name at first. They knew only that a Japanese diplomat in Lithuania had helped them escape. Over time, stories connected. Survivors began searching. They found Sugihara alive but obscure. In the 1960s and 1970s, recognition finally began to emerge. Survivors contacted him. Invitations came from abroad. Israel honored him as righteous among the nations, one of the few Japanese citizens to receive that title. He traveled to Jerusalem, where trees were planted in his name. Only then did broader awareness begin to grow. Even then, Sugihara remained modest. When asked why he had done it, he did not speak of heroism. He said simply that he could not ignore people in need. He said he would do the same again. His story challenges easy assumptions about World War II. Japan was an Axis power, yet one of its diplomats saved thousands of Jews. The Holocaust was a system of destruction, yet it depended on individuals following orders. Sugihara broke that chain, not through violence, but through paperwork. This is the unsettling power of his story. It shows that even within oppressive systems, individuals retain agency. Sugihara did not overthrow governments or change the course of the war. But for thousands of families, he changed everything. The refugees he saved went on to become doctors, teachers, artists, engineers, rabbis, grandparents. Their descendants number in the tens of thousands today. Entire communities exist because one man chose conscience over compliance. In a century defined by mass death and industrialized murder, Chiune Sugihara's actions stand out not because they were dramatic, but because they were deliberate. He understood the consequences. He weighed them carefully, and he acted anyway. This is not a story of perfection. Sugihara was a man of his time, shaped by Imperial Japan, limited in what he could imagine or challenge. But when faced with undeniable human suffering, he refused to hide behind procedure. After the war ended, and the world slowly began to understand the true scale of the Holocaust, Chiune Sugihara returned to a Japan that barely resembled the country he had once served. Cities lay in ruins, the empire had collapsed, and the nation was under Allied occupation. Japan was rebuilding its identity from the ashes of defeat, and in this process there was little interest in the quiet moral defiance of one former diplomat whose actions abroad complicated the official narrative. Sugihara was summoned by the foreign ministry and informed that his diplomatic career was over. Officially, the reason was budget cuts and restructuring. Unofficially, it was clear that his disobedience in Lithuania had not been forgotten. In a system built on obedience and hierarchy, he had crossed an unforgivable line. He accepted the decision without protest. He did not argue his case. He did not demand recognition. He simply returned home and tried to live an ordinary life. Ordinary life, however, was not easy. Sugihara had a wife and children to support, and without the security of a government post, he struggled. He took various jobs, many far below his education and experience. He sold goods door to door. He worked for trading companies. He lived modestly, sometimes in near poverty. Neighbors did not know what he had done. To them, he was just another man trying to survive in post-war Japan. For years, he said almost nothing about Lithuania. In Japanese society at the time, speaking openly about wartime actions was uncomfortable, especially actions that involved disobeying the state. Sugihara was not bitter, but he was realistic. He understood that his choice had come with consequences, and he accepted them as the price of his decision. Meanwhile, across the world, the lives he had saved were unfolding in ways he could never have imagined. Children who had escaped Europe grew into adults. Families rebuilt. Communities flourished in Israel, the United States, Canada, Australia, and elsewhere. Some survivors carried their transit visas for decades, preserving them as sacred objects. Others passed the story down to their children, describing the Japanese diplomat who had written endlessly while the world closed its doors. Slowly, those stories began to converge. Survivors started asking questions. Who was this man? Was he still alive? Could he be found? In an era before instant communication, this took time. But by the 1960s, contact was made. Letters arrived. Phone calls followed. Sugihara, who had lived quietly for so long, was suddenly confronted with the living proof of his actions. When he met some of the people he had saved, the experience was overwhelming. Men and women stood before him, not as refugees but as parents, professionals, elders. They thanked him. They introduced their children. They told him stories of survival, of families rebuilt, of lives lived. For Sugihara, these encounters confirmed something he had always believed but never seen fully realized: that a single act of compassion could ripple across generations. In 1985, the State of Israel officially recognized Chiune Sugihara as righteous among the nations. This honor was reserved for non-Jews who had risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. It was a rare recognition for a Japanese citizen, and it placed Sugihara among a small group of individuals whose moral courage stood out against the backdrop of genocide. When he traveled to Israel for the ceremony, he walked along the Avenue of the Righteous at Yad Vashem, where trees were planted in his name. Survivors and their families gathered around him. Some bowed deeply, following Japanese custom. Others embraced him. For the first time, his story was publicly acknowledged on a global stage. Even then, Sugihara resisted the label of hero. When asked why he had issued the visas, he gave simple answers. He said he felt sorry for the refugees. He said he could not bear to see them suffer. He said he acted as a human being, not as a diplomat. He rejected any suggestion that he was extraordinary. This modesty was not false humility. It reflected his worldview. Sugihara believed that compassion was not a special virtue, but a basic responsibility. To him, the shocking thing was not that he had helped, but that so many others had not. Back in Japan, recognition came slowly. For years, his story was little known. The nation was still grappling with its wartime past, and stories that challenged simple narratives of victimhood or heroism were often sidelined. But gradually, as Japan's relationship with its history matured, interest in Sugihara grew. Books were written. Documentaries were produced. Schools began teaching his story. He became known as the Japanese Schindler, though the comparison was imperfect. Unlike Oskar Schindler, Sugihara did not seek redemption or recognition later in life. He had acted quietly and paid the price quietly. His family bore that price with him. His wife Yukiko had supported him during the visa-writing marathon in Kaunas, bringing him food and encouraging him to continue when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him. After the war, she supported the family through hardship and uncertainty. Their children grew up aware that their father had made a choice that had cost him his career but saved countless lives. Sugihara died in 1986, not long after receiving international recognition. He did not live to see the full extent of his legacy. Today, estimates suggest that tens of thousands of people are alive because of the visas he issued. Entire family trees exist because one man refused to obey an unjust order. His story forces uncomfortable questions. What does it mean to follow orders? When does obedience become complicity? How much responsibility does an individual bear within a system designed to remove personal accountability? During the Holocaust, countless officials claimed they were just following orders. Sugihara demonstrated that this was a choice, not an inevitability. He showed that even within rigid bureaucracies, individuals retain moral agency. His pen became an instrument of resistance. It is also important to recognize what Sugihara did not do. He did not organize a movement. He did not publicly protest. He did not challenge the Axis alliance directly. His resistance was quiet, procedural, and almost invisible at the time. And yet, it was devastatingly effective. This challenges the popular image of resistance as loud, violent, or dramatic. Sugihara's resistance took place at a desk, through paperwork, stamps, and signatures. It was slow, repetitive, exhausting work. It required patience more than courage, endurance more than defiance. In that sense, his story is especially relevant today. Modern injustice often operates through systems, regulations, and policies rather than overt violence. Harm is inflicted not by monsters, but by ordinary people doing their jobs. Sugihara's example shows that resistance in such systems may also look ordinary. It may involve saying no. It may involve bending rules. It may involve accepting personal loss to prevent greater harm. There is also a darker side to the story that cannot be ignored. Sugihara's actions were exceptional precisely because they were rare. Most diplomats did not do what he did. Most governments did not open their doors. Millions died while paperwork was processed, denied, or ignored. Remembering Sugihara should not allow us to forget the broader failure of the international community. At the same time, his story offers something rare in Holocaust history. A clear example of what worked. Rescue was possible. Escape was possible. Survival was possible when individuals and institutions chose to act. For the survivors, Sugihara was not a symbol or a lesson. He was the reason they lived. Many named children after him. Many kept his letters. Some visited his grave. Gratitude became part of their identity, passed down alongside trauma and loss. For historians, Sugihara represents a challenge to deterministic views of history. He reminds us that even in the most constrained circumstances, outcomes are not fully predetermined. Human choice matters. For Japan, his legacy continues to evolve. He stands as a reminder that Japanese history during World War II was not monolithic. Within an imperial system responsible for immense suffering, there were individuals who acted differently. Acknowledging this does not erase Japan's wartime crimes, but it complicates the narrative in necessary ways. For the world, Chiune Sugihara's life poses a simple but difficult question. If placed in his position, what would we do? Would we follow policy, protect our careers, and tell ourselves that responsibility lies elsewhere? Or would we accept the cost of conscience? Sugihara never claimed certainty. He did not know how history would judge him. He did not know whether the refugees would survive their journeys. He did not know whether his actions would matter in the face of global catastrophe. He acted anyway. In the end, his defiance was not loud enough to stop the war or the Holocaust. But it was loud enough to echo across generations. It was loud enough to save lives. It was loud enough to prove that even in the darkest times, humanity is not entirely extinguished. That is the enduring power of his story. Not that he was perfect, but that he was human. Not that he was fearless, but that he acted despite fear. Not that he changed the world, but that he changed the world for those who stood before his desk, begging for a chance to live. And sometimes that is enough.